Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Rad Gaming Podcast. I'm Jamshi.
And I am Pescador. And in this episode of the podcast, we talk to Mike James, a fellow podcaster and content creator on Twitch. We discuss what separates partner streamers from casual streamers. And he also gives some examples on how to stand out as a streamer and how to stay motivated during your highest and lowest points.
This episode of the Rad Gaming Podcast is sponsored by Cento Fiore. Cento Fiore is a lifestyle fashion brand that sees beauty and cultural heritage and always strives to offer timeless and elegant style. Visit cento-fiore.com to join the family. That's CENTO-FIORI.com. All right, and now on to our interview with Mike James.
Well, we just want to start off by saying thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We truly appreciate you coming on.
It's my pleasure, honestly. Thank you for reaching out.
By all means, my man. So tell us about yourself before you started streaming.
Well, my personal story goes quite far back in terms of, gaming and content creation and things. Because before I started streaming, I was actually I was a YouTuber, quote unquote. I used to make Minecraft videos back in the day. I was one of those OG Minecraft boys that made Minecraft mod spotlights and things like that. Trying to be the next Yogscast, which I think is the now equivalent would be the next Ninja, I think. So yeah, before streaming, I started making YouTube videos back in around about 2012, so quite a long time ago in terms of content creation. But outside of that, like gaming and stuff, I've always played games. I've always been interested in making videos. I remember I used to be in my parents' garage with a little handheld camera, choreographing fight scenes and things. And I actually went on to do TV and film production at university before I started streaming. So yeah.
Oh, wow, film production, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa,
yeah,
did you do anything with that?
No. And it's not because I didn't want to, but it was basically because I specialized in film directing. And then when I graduated, I had a couple of jobs, and basically where I am in the UK, there's just no media jobs whatsoever. I'd have to move away, but the issue is that I got I got with my then girlfriend, now fiance, about 5 years ago, and I graduated shortly after that, and I just we sort of just settled down. We got a flat near my parents' house, so we just sort of settled down then. So I wasn't in the position to move away and go into the media industry. So I thought, well, what better to do than to go self-employed? So I actually went self-employed as a freelance photographer, and that's kind of what I do outside of Twitch as well. So
what do you take photos of?
Well, I started off in animal portraits. My partner rides a horse, so started off in there, and then I want to move it, and now I want to move into cosplay photography and things.
That's pretty cool.
That's actually unique. I don't think that's usually people go into the wedding route is usually where most of the photographers go.
I know this isn't a photography podcast, so I'll save you the long story, but weddings are no.
Well, go ahead. Give us a little bit of what that's like. It sounds like you've got stories.
Well, basically, inside the wedding photography industry, we have what we like to call bridezillas, which are the brides that take everything completely over the top. They get angry, they get really upset about every little detail, and if you've missed maybe one photograph on their day, quite rightly,
you miss one moment.
So it's the amount of pressure on your shoulders. And actually, I've only done a few weddings, but the last wedding I did, I did have a second shooter who sort of caught the action, but when they said, "Oh, you may now kiss the bride," I kind of missed that moment.
Oh, dang!
Luckily, the second shooter got it wasn't a terribly good picture, but because but luckily she got that moment and it kind of saved me. But yeah, that could have ended my career, actually. That's how serious those sort of things are when it comes to photography. That's why I don't really do weddings that often, because it's just
that just sounds so stressful. One or two slip-ups and suddenly that's a review that just like tarnishes your whole reputation, you know?
Yeah.
So I saw on your Twitter profile, it said Slytherin on there. Would you mind explaining that?
Well, me and both my fiance and I are huge Harry Potter fans, and when I follow a few people on Twitter that have their houses written in their bios, and knowing that, I did the Pottermore test. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've taken that.
The Pottermore website to find out what house you're in, and I got put in Slytherin, which was kind of odd to me. But
I need to do it.
What do you expect to get put into?
Well, I'm quite a creative person, so I thought I'd be putting. I think it's Hufflepuff. I think.
Yeah, Hufflepuff. I think, because I think that's it's that one, or it's either Ravenclaw. I got Ravenclaw, but I wouldn't say that I'm the creative.
I was expecting Hufflepuff, but yeah, I got put in Slytherin. But I know that everybody sees Slytherin as like that sort of like evil person, even though I'm not really evil like at all. I just thought it'd be quite a unique conversation starter to put that in the bio, when people, because normally people put like Gryffindor or something in there, goody two shoes and all that. So I thought, I'll go with Slytherin and just be a little bit different. But it is the actual house that I was put into as well. But I was hoping that it would come off a little bit better. But everybody just.
I was thinking everybody probably has like the same reaction as you, where they're like Slytherin. Like if they actually like get to know you, they're probably like, "What's going on here? Like, how come I saw Slytherin on there?"
It is. It's like it's almost like if Harry Potter got put in Slytherin. Like, I'm not trying to blow smoke, up my own backside or anything, but I am not by any means an evil person. I was talking about this the other day. I remember getting shouted at by my teacher when I was about 13. And I still feel guilty for getting told off by my teacher. So I don't know why I'm in Slytherin. I'd make a terrible Slytherin. Like Malfoy would do something to break the rules, and I'd start crying or something. I don't really know.
Just go in the fetal position. Just what are you doing? I need to take the test. I never did it, so I need to figure out what I am. To be honest, I'm gonna have to do that when I'm done.
Yeah, you're going to have to do that. And if you're Slytherin, we can be buddies.
Yes, we can. Even if we're not, we can still be friends, I guess. Do they have friends outside of their, houses? Is that a thing in Harry Potter? Because I don't remember. Because as far back as I can remember, no one's really friends outside of their own houses, I guess.
Harry's friends with Luna, and she's in...
That's true.
Ravenclaw, right?
Yeah, she is.
She Hufflepuff.
No, I think she's Ravenclaw. Oh, man, this is bad.
I think it's Ravenclaw.
I think it's Ravenclaw. I'm pretty sure.
But I know that... what was it? Harry Potter wanted to date Cho Chang, which was from Ravenclaw. So
yeah,
but you know what I mean. Like, so I think they kind of mingle a little bit.
I think it's just Slytherins. I think just like to keep to themselves, apparently, which doesn't bode well for me. But
so, man, you have a podcast. Mind talking about that? What got you started doing podcasts?
Well, funnily enough, the style of the podcast is kind of similar to like what we're doing now, and the reason behind it was, I don't know if you're familiar with the streamer known as Ashley Christ. She is a Twitch coach, or a streamer coach, sorry. She's a stream coach, and she, I found her about June last year, and I got interested in how she was doing IRL streams, and helping people, doing like channel reviews, and she did a lot of like marketing research and things to sort of help streamers. And I thought, I sort of said to myself, that's a pretty cool concept. Like, I'd love to, because I love helping people. Like, if somebody comes to me with an issue that I need help with, doesn't matter what it is, I'll try and help them as best I can.
And you ended up in Slytherin. Doesn't make any sense to me. Okay.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean. I don't really get it. But yeah, so I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to help people I didn't want to be a stream coach. I didn't want to be a stream mentor. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to like necessarily straight up monetize my time for helping people grow their streams, etc., etc. So I thought, what's the best way to do that, but in a way that's, beneficial to everyone. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll make a podcast, because I'd been listening to some podcasts as well, things like, I don't know if you want me to mention podcast names.
By all means, it's fine with us.
Here or not. But I was listening to Jenna Kutcher's Gold Digger podcast, which is all about female entrepreneurs and bosses and things, and a few influencer podcasts at the time when I was walking to and from the gym. And I thought, like, that's a cool concept to be able to take, to create an hour-long show where I can, educate people and inspire people to create content, but do it through interviewing other established content creators and get their side of how they got to where they are in the industry and where they are in terms of their own content, and then sort of just break down their content into, like the core elements of what helped them grow and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of where it started, and it like instantly just sort of, I honestly, to be honest with you, I expected to struggle to get guests, because in my head at the time, before I started this, I saw, especially partners on Twitch as well, I saw them as being quite, busy, to put it simply.
Kind of like unreachable.
Yeah, like unreachable and busy, and because I've been on Twitch now 7 years, and not streaming all the time, but I used to moderate for some full-time streamers. When I was doing my Minecraft YouTube stuff, I was on Twitch at like the same time, but not streaming. And I just remember streamers, like partner streamers, having this almost like celebrity status, and like you said, being completely unreachable and things. But every partner that I've reached out to, like 98% of them have turned around and been like, yeah, cool, just tell me when and I'll be there. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like expecting a, oh, I'm sorry, I really can't do it. I'm too busy. But I just expected,
or just cold silence.
Yeah, just like being ignored, or just expected. And I don't know why. I'm not trying to say that all partners are like evil people that are like above anybody else. It's just how I perceived them at the time. But the more partners that I reach out, the more, the more that I make the shows and things, the more that they turn around and like, yeah, I'll do that, sure, just tell me when and where, and I'll be there. And I'm just kind of blown away by just how, I know it sounds horrible out loud, but kind of just blown away by how human and how nice partner streamers are. I hope none of them hate me after hearing that.
Yeah, the thoughts you had. I think it probably also, it's like, you got to think that maybe they have to be that kind of person to become a partner. Like there's probably the things they had to, like the community they had to build up, like get that viewership. If they're not really a person that people feel like they can easily reach out to and talk to, they're probably not, I think there's kind of that aspect as well.
Yeah. I mean, when you word it like that, it makes it sound like, human, but
yeah, like, oh yeah, of course. But like, I understand what you're saying, where you're like, when you're just starting out, it's kind of like, well, does anybody want to like acknowledge me or anything? Like,
it's more or less the question of why would anyone want to do this for me? They don't really know me or owe me anything, kind of thing. So
and like another issue inside, like just in my head, that I had was that I thought that a lot of people would get angry at me, because obviously having established streamers on as guests, I thought I was quickly going to build up a reputation because I hate to admit it, but there is quite a negative element to the streaming community sometimes. And I honestly expected a lot of people to get angry at me for, using people to like build up my own name. And all these things start running around in your head because, you just, especially when you're on Twitter every day, you kind of get subject to all the drama that goes on in the streaming community. So you sort of, I don't know. It does get a bit scary sometimes, when you want to state an opinion that you think might not necessarily be 100% what the general consensus agrees with. You kind of feel like, oh, do I share this? Like, do I want to cause a war today?
Yeah. You're from Slytherin, so I mean, I would assume you always want to cause that war. So you've talked to tons of content creators. Is there someone that you not recommend, but I guess remember in your mind that had some unusual piece of advice, but actually turned out to be really good advice?
I'm trying to think. I feel like a lot of the creators, obviously, they've all had their different paths, but
Yeah.
all of the advice kind of, you know, when you funnel it down, it kind of comes down to all the same sort of concepts when it comes to, because essentially, you know, when you're trying to grow a stream, you're trying to grow a brand. So there was one partner streamer called Duty Beard who where we discussed, rather than going to cons and handing out business cards, which is, you know, what everybody sort of feels like they need to do when they go to like TwitchCon or whatever, they hand out business cards. He was talking about handing out like stickers and pins and stuff, you know, handouts that people can use. And I thought that was just a cool bit of advice, considering how many people actually, you know, go to cons and things like that. I thought that was just brilliant, because he was talking about it from because he used to be a musician, so he said that he actually went to the Download Festival, and handed out a bunch of like stickers and pins for his stream at Download Festival. But I just thought that was a bit quirky, and I mean that's kind of stuck with me, to be honest. But on top of that, it's kind of all you can break down most of the advice down to, you know, pretty generic quote unquote points, to be honest, because at the end of the day, you know, when you're growing a brand, there's always basic, and growing your content, there's always those basic steps that we all follow, you know, like marketing and things like that, and community building and bringing value to people, etc., etc.
You started streaming, you started on Twitch, I should say, or you were on Twitch, 7 years ago. Is there some obstacle that you've overcome over those, 7 years, and whenever you started streaming in there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you'll probably get a lot of people that'll tell you, like they overcame, just learning to speak to themselves, blah, blah, blah. But one thing that I've not really shared that like too much, but it's actually my confidence, like my self-esteem and things like that. Being quite a little bit of a bigger guy when you're starting out. I mean, I remember trying to stream some Minecraft like 3 or 4 years ago, and I never used a webcam. I had a webcam, I just didn't use it because I was too scared about, what the internet would have to say to somebody that was a little bit on the bigger side, being, 18, 17, you kind of, at that age, you're led to believe that everybody else's opinions matter. But then as you sort of get into your 20s and early 20s and things, and I'm coming up to mid-20s now, I kind of just get to that point where, you kind of just, you realize that insults are just meaningless and don't really mean much. And most of the time they're coming from, kids and teenagers, especially on the internet, and occasionally older gentlemen, which is a little bit weird. But but yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, definitely 100%. The biggest thing that I've had to overcome is my self-confidence, and because of streaming as well, not just my self-esteem, but my confidence is just, it's double, like I'd say it's tripled actually. Like me coming into a call with used to maybe 5 years ago, I probably would have been pretty quiet for like the first half an hour, but now it's kind of like it's almost like I aim to be the loudest voice in the room. Maybe
without even really having to try either. If you just kind of
yeah. And I would say alcohol helps, but I don't really drink. I haven't drank for many years, and that's thanks to my teenage years when I used to inhale alcohol like a fish. That's my friend's quotes, by the way, not mine.
So you had this moment in which you were just kind of anxious about maybe starting to use a webcam. What made you decide, hey, you know what, today's the day, I'm going to do it?
I think it was just that moment where I sort of realized, like, I don't remember like the specific day, but the time was roughly, it was about February last year, and I had been laid off work, and obviously I was thinking about starting the photography, and I just thought, like, I have the chance here to build up a career in content creation and photography and doing some freelance stuff. And I have the real good opportunity here, and I've got the time and I've got the support from my fiance, because we do live in our own house that we bought with a mortgage and everything. And luckily she's in a really good job, and she sort of just said, she kind of just said, go for it. You only live once, and I'll, if it doesn't work out after like a year or two, then just, go step down and, go and get a nice, comfortable job that you can get with your degree and things. And it was just in February last year where I just kind of went, yeah, let's just do it. And I remember turning on like a really terrible 240p webcam, seeing like a pixelated, unbearded face, because I didn't have a beard at the time. I mean, it's not really a proper beard now, but and I remember turning it on and I remember just sort of, I know it sounds a bit weird to say out loud, but I just remember seeing my like round moon face, and I just like shuddered at seeing my own face. And so I just grew from there. And then Valentine's Day, my fiance bought me the C920 Logitech webcam.
Oh, nice.
Which is like is like the go-to webcam for streamers. And I just, ever since then, I've just sort of grown in confidence. And I don't know if you've seen as well, I also started doing like piece to camera YouTube videos as well, which that's taken me like another 9 months to grow balls of steel to do, because I've just never really it was the same concept. I didn't want to stream with a webcam. I didn't want to make YouTube videos out of fear of what people would say and blah blah blah. So, but 9 months later, from I literally started about 3 weeks ago. I just turned on the webcam, recorded some pieces, edited together, and yeah, people loved the 2 videos that I put out so far. So we'll just carry on doing that, I suppose.
Content creation is something extremely tough to do. I know that when I started doing it when I was younger, I put out a few things, and I saw that like no one really saw it, and I was just like, you know what, I'm done with this. I mean, did you ever have that time in your life that you put out a few things and you're just like, no one's really watching, listening? Like, did you ever want to give up?
Yes. I actually, do you know what? Some would say I do, some would say I don't. But I would like to think that I have a sort of established content creation, at least the start of a career right now. But even now, like in the position that I'm in, like right now, I'm in this period where there's no real games at the moment that are like drawing me in. Like I haven't played a game properly in like a month, and I've been doing because I live stream my my podcast. When I'm recording them, I live stream them on Twitch, and I haven't felt like playing a game, so I haven't streamed a game in like a month. And there's points over those times where I've been thinking, is this right? Like, do I want to do this? Like, and then I look at like my friends, getting jobs and getting married and buying Range Rovers and things, and I'm like, should I just go and get a job and just be a normal person, quote unquote, and just and I've even now I face thoughts of like, is it worth it? But then at the end of the day, you kind of just have to remind yourself, like, you are going to face these times, and I have a mission that I want to educate and inspire people. So even if, for example, I put out a podcast episode and in the first 24 hours it only has like 3 or 4 downloads, because some of them get a lot, some of them don't, and even then I'm like, at least I've changed, at least I've educated, or at least I've inspired 1 or 2 people. And to me, that's kind of like, I don't set my standards so high to where I'm like, oh, I need to be like inspiring and educating 100 people, or my content is meaningless. So I kind of just set my goals a little bit lower. So then, when I do achieve them, it feels like any goal, really. It just feels amazing.
So throughout this entire process, there's been so many times that you had to change, I guess, the way you've looked at things. What really inspired you to continue to do what you did?
I'm trying to think of the best possible reason that, because a few things inspire me, and
so it was more like just a factor of multiple things then.
Yeah, because I mean, for example, one of them is that I've never liked the idea of, you know, earning money for somebody else in life. Like, to me, you know, you could go and get a 9-to-5 job, and no disrespect to anybody that does, you can go and get a 9-to-5 job and you could work for 20 to 30 grand a year, but the work that you're doing is contributing to a overall business or an individual earning millions and millions and millions a year. So I kind of just thought, you know, I kind of want to do that for myself. And, you know, I've seen that it's possible from all the other content creators that have done it. You know, I've still got a lot to learn, but then there's also on top of that, the reason which is a little bit more personal, and that's my mum has worked nights for a store for pretty much my entire life, and because she works nights, I hardly ever get to see her, hardly ever get to spend time with her, and quite honestly, I haven't spent a birthday with my mum, like my own birthdays. I haven't spent a birthday with my mum in about, I'm 24 now, so I'd say about 19 years. I haven't had a full, you know, day, but just time with my mum, because she's always worked at this store on nights, so she's always had to come in. I've always had to wake up at like 8 o'clock to open presents and things with her, and then she'll go to bed, and then I'll get, maybe sometimes, some years I'll get to see her for maybe an hour before she goes to work, but most years it's just on the morning when I'm opening presents, and then she has to go to bed. And then, you know, people go to work because my birthday's quite near Christmas. So most people are working, and I'm sat there just like, well, what do I do now? Like, not having anybody else to sort of have, you know, do plans with and stuff. And I get that. So that kind of just makes me, like, feel personally like when me and my fiance start having kids, you know, a couple of years down the line, I want to be in the position where I can, you know, take whatever time I want to go and spend with my family.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then I can work around them. I always wanted to work around, you know, my partner and my family and things. So, yeah, that's kind of like tied into the whole package that sort of keeps me going.
Yeah, a lot of those 9-to-5 jobs really aren't as flexible, you know, like you can, like, you know, move it off to like, oh, well, I'll just, you know, move everything back like an hour or two or something, or, you know, another day. Like, you can't just tell your job, be like, hey, I'll be in tomorrow. And they're like, what? You know, like, you know, like, there's things that, you know,
I find that
it's also the other fun part that you get community that kind of like can understand that, as opposed to you're working, it's coworkers that you have to talk to, as opposed to community.
I find that a lot of people compare themselves to other individuals. I know that social media makes it so easy to do so. Like, I don't know if you find yourself doing this, but a while back I was, you know, I just moved from Pennsylvania to South Carolina, and I was looking through my phone, and I just got a new job down here, and I was like, man, I wonder what my friends are doing. And I see that they're, you know, they have successful careers and things like that. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have done that or done this. But I came to the realization that why would I compare myself to somebody else? I mean, I'm happy with my life, and my life is completely different from everybody else's. So, I mean, like, what, maybe they're going through something terrible I don't know of. All I see is their, you know, life through social media. But, I mean, they also said something on the lines of, there was a woman that made 6 figures, and she had a really good job, but she had a high stakes job, really stressful job. So she quit and started selling ice cream, and she said she's never been happier. Her stress level is completely down, and she loves life so much more because she understands that life is not about money, it's about experiences.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I you know, I'd agree with her, and I'd applaud her. I've always said, you know, I've said to my partner, I know it sounds weird out loud, but It's kind of just one of those soppy things like you said. But I sort of said to her, I'd rather live in a cardboard box with you than, live in a mansion where I get to see you maybe once a year or something. It was something to that effect, and it was kind of, going along the same premise of that. Like, I wouldn't want to, work in a job where I'm working from like 7 a.m. I mean, yeah, look, content creation, I kind of am working from 8 a.m. all the way up to pretty much midnight anyway, because I'm always on Twitter, networking. I'm always marketing things. I'm always trying to read up on how to improve marketing, other elements and things. So I'm always like working now, but it's doing something that I love, and that I definitely agree with that lady. Life is just not worth, to me personally, is not worth the stress of trying to earn millions in something that you hate. Like, I would happily, and I've always said this, I would happily take, do content creation, earning, $2,000 a month. I know a lot of people strive to do it for a lot of money and a lot of fame, blah, 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 blah. But I'd be happy to just build up a social media empire where I'm earning maybe 2,000-3,000 a month, where I've got a little bit on the side to, live life a little bit and, pay off like my student loan and things. And I'd be happy with that right up until the day that I, kiss this world goodbye, to be honest. Because, I wouldn't want to stress about, earning millions. I mean, who needs millions, really?
Yeah, and then I could think also that it would also benefit your partner as well. Like, say if you're always stressed, are you pleasant to be around anymore? Even though you have all this money, she's like, well, I don't really like being around him because he's always so stressed and he's always, just not in a good mood all the time because something is going on at work, And if you're always happy when you're doing your job, she's like, oh, well, he's nice to have around. That's because that's what you want when you have a partner. Yeah. You don't want to be like annoyed every time you see them, because then
yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, it's probably just me, but I really hate money. Like, if you sit and think about money, I really hate money. I really hate what money does to people. And look, I'm not
like the concept of money.
Yeah, like, I'm not one of those guys. I'm not one of those guys that sits here on a daily basis that's like, oh, I hate money and I hate greedy people, blah 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 blah. But it's like, I just hate the concept of money in terms of, like, money. Like, I remember one time my dad said to me, you don't have to be happy about it, but money makes the world go around. And like, just thinking about that is just it. Do you know what? It doesn't anger me or anything. It upsets me a little bit, just because it's like, it kind of. I wouldn't ever do this because obviously I like my computer, but I kind of envy the time period where people were just born into a world and, yeah, they had to earn money to put food on the table, but they did it through, like selling chickens or making and selling bread or making and selling mats. I'm talking about, like pre-Victorian era in England is like, just seems glorious in comparison to what we have now. Just not having to stress about earning a wage and working for a boss and things like that. Just waking up,
because then you got bills to pay, loans to pay off, and all kinds of. Seems like nothing happens unless money's involved.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that unfortunate truth with the.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna finish that up by just saying, look, as much as I say that I hate it, I have a respect for it, and I know how it works, and I know that some people have different sort of relationships with money, and I could probably improve mine, but it is what it is.
I think you can also, for me, I can respect people's drive to work towards that, because like that's not easy. So like I can respect that aspect, but make sure that they're like, striving for that for the right reasons is also what I kind of go with that.
I know you were touching upon marketing. You said that you constantly research marketing techniques. What is the one marketing technique that you noticed that a lot of people aren't utilizing?
Well, especially in the streaming community, pretty much every single marketing technique ever, to be honest. But the biggest is to be honest, the biggest one is probably just not understanding the value that you deliver to people. So when you create a podcast, or when you stream, or when you make an Instagram post, whether you like it or not, you're going to elicit a response out of an individual. So you can tailor your content to hit a certain response from an individual, and that comes down to if you want to be like if you want to have comedic value and you want to be sort of a bit of a funny onion, which I'm not particularly very funny person, or you've got like emotional value if you want to be somebody that can relate to people. You've got that relational value and things like that. And a lot of streamers just boot up a game and they'll sit blankly and stare at the game that they're playing, and they'll interact with chat on occasion, but they don't really create like an experience by providing value. And it honestly, from interviewing all of the partners that I've interviewed on Twitch specifically, that's the one thing that separates established creators and people that are struggling to get out of the top two, like 1 to 5 viewer range, is the fact that the 1 to 5 viewer range doesn't really particularly understand yet the concept of creating an entertaining experience for people to come and view or listen to in terms of a podcast. So honestly, it's probably just value that they hold, and everybody has it, even if it's even if you just want to be like the next Ninja, that's still providing professional level gameplay. And Ninja still has his entertainment value. He has all his like dances, and he used to be a lot more vocal and things. And you can break it all down, and a lot of people don't seem to understand that. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I've taken out of interviewing partners, and then being in that position and looking at other people that are tweeting out, "Oh, I'm going to quit streaming because I'm not streaming to anybody," and things like that. It's like, well, I'll reply to them and I'll sort of say, "Oh, well, like what value are you bringing to people?" And they're like, "No, I just wanted to play Call of Duty." And it's like, there's your answer.
Yeah, because you're offering Call of Duty, and then there's other streamers who are offering Call of Duty with an environment almost whenever you come into their channel. Like they've got all these aspects that are coming along with it. And it's like, well, when you have the two, which one are you gonna choose? So like that's kind of the other thing where it's just like kind of just see what everyone else is doing, because like you said, like you see that people who are putting all that, they're putting in value. It's like, well, if I put in value too, all the people who aren't putting in value suddenly are, you become more appealing.
And I mean, take us three, for example. Could you imagine if somebody tuned into this podcast and me and us three were just sat here like, hey?
Yeah, I could actually. Like, be awful.
You guys, like, I don't know, you wanna go and play some, I don't know, some Roblox after this? I don't know.
Yeah, last time we played was pretty cool.
Like, can you imagine if all three of us were talking like that? Like, people, obviously that's coming off as the sort of the way that we're presenting ourselves. I get that, but it's kind of like, we understand that we're trying to provide value in a way of, being. Well, I mean, you've got me on the show, so not very funny, but I'm going to assume typically quite funny, but yeah, it's just kind of it's one of those things. But the thing is, as well, is you can't preach to people. You can't reach out and just give unsolicited advice, because I've learned very, very quickly giving unsolicited advice to people that didn't ask for it normally results in people getting quite vocal towards you, as I found out on Instagram.
Yeah, I think there is that kind of problem that a lot of people like they won't, like, unless they're open to receiving advice, they will never take it. Like, it's like you can say all you want, all the things you can help them with, and they will just never listen, because they're just not in the mindset to think that there's something that they can improve upon. Like when, I don't know, like there's all that kinds of stuff, like even outside of streaming, just like in life, if you're not kind of like, obviously there's some advice that you should kind of be like, well, that's not really advice, like tell me, like, if it's not useful, where you're like, oh, I want to make more money, like get a better job, and you're like, duh. Like, what? Like, that's not really advice. That's just telling me the facts, you know?
You had your podcast. I'm going to be 100% honest. The first podcast that Jemshi and I did, on our part, it wasn't amazing because we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we thought we knew. We went in having these questions, and I'm not going to lie, we sounded like robots. I'll be 100% honest. What was your first podcast like?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so my first podcast, I wanted to just get one out there. So I actually did it solo for my first podcast, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I've done YouTube videos for years and years and years. Even before I started my Minecraft videos, I used to do like Call of Duty montages and things. Like, I am used to doing like a 10-minute YouTube video of just talking about the game for 10 minutes. Then I started streaming. That was another learning curve. And, you know, talking throughout like a 3-4 hour stream about, you know, narrating your life and your gameplay and things like that. Again, you know, it took a bit of skill, but it was fairly easy because I had done YouTube videos. Whew, that podcast, that was a whole different ball game. Like 40 minutes of talking on your own, especially because the issue, and I'm sure you guys will understand this, is I didn't want to script out my podcast too much in the hopes of sounding completely robotic, like you mentioned. I didn't really want to be like, you know, I didn't want to make it sound like I was reading off a screen or something from reading something that I wrote. So I just wrote bullet points, and I'd start talking about the bullet points, and I'd muddle up the bullet points and things, and it would get to that point where I'm like, oh, I was expecting to talk about this for 5 minutes, and I've only spoken about it for like 2 minutes. Yeah. So I'd find myself repeating a lot of things, and I didn't even know what I wanted to make my first episode on. So I kind of just made it. I literally just spoke for 40 minutes about creating a Discord server and just called that Start Your Streaming Community Today or something. And I was like, you know, I put it out there and I asked for people to give me feedback and things. And, you know, generally the feedback was quite good, but yeah, no.
You really wanted the honest opinions. You were like, tell me really, like, what can I do?
Reading those comments, you're like, dang, that's rough. You know?
To be fair though, a lot of the comments on my podcast were actually a lot nicer than the comments the people, my friends that I got to critique my first piece to camera YouTube video that I did 3 weeks ago. Because I don't know if you remember the YouTuber about 4 or 5 years ago, Ray William Johnson. When
of course,
yeah.
I love Ray William Johnson.
Yeah, like. So I didn't just want to like stand there with my arms by my like flailing around beside me. I didn't want to stand looking at the camera just for 10 minutes going blah 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 blah, you know, and just look bored.
Drone on.
So I said to myself, right, what I'll do is I'll put a bit of bounce in my step, a bit like what Ray William Johnson used to do. Yeah, nobody liked that. In fact, one of my friends messaged me in the Discord server and said, what did he say? He said something along the lines of, like, there we are. He said, I've got it up in front of me. He said, Mike, also just checked out your first video, and Jesus, you were making me feel sick with all the moving you were doing. So I was like, damn. But yeah, a lot of people said that. So in the second one, I sat down. But generally, the feedback for the podcast as well was just a lot of people were just talking about, you know, like nitpicking it, like, you know, at the end of a sentence, the microphone was being a little bit too sensitive, and they could hear me, like, you know, like taking the breath in to speak or like breathing out and things like that. And it was just like little nitpicky things. But yeah, just talking for 40 minutes was a whole new ball game for me, and it was just. Yeah, I wish I just like waited and just done like an interview with somebody. But I mean, even then, the interview with somebody wasn't particularly that much easier because I was just like dreading, you know, like, you know, hoping to get enough out of the person. Because like you mentioned at the very beginning, you know, some people talk for a long time and some people don't. Some people give you quite close-ended answers and things.
Oh yeah,
and just sort of like. yeah, this and that. No, nah, maybe sometimes. And it's like, yeah, okay. So, building on that to try and get them to keep talking and things. And honestly, I was just, yeah, you guys will probably know. It was just,
yeah, you're like, you don't want it to be an interview. You don't want to be like beating the answers out of them, because then you're like, you're just doing a ton of work.
Or some question you thought that would be so drawn out, like, oh, this is going to take probably about 5 minutes to answer because it's an in-depth question. And then you ask them and they're like, yeah, because of this. And then it's done. And you're like, oh, dang. Like, I wasn't expecting that to be answered that fast. And then you try to like, you're like, so the next, yeah. So you mentioned way back in the beginning, you have to like really catch yourself and keep on going. And I think that's a lot of people don't really see that in a podcast. Like it's tough to kind of like make sure the questions and the conversation keeps on going, because I feel awkward silence is awkward, So I try to kind of keep the questions going and flowing, but sometimes it's very tough.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me of the first time I did an interview with somebody. I left in some of the gaps, and that was one of the biggest one of the most common pieces of feedback that I got, that people were like, oh, I had to check if the podcast was still running, because it sounded like, because the audio just went dead, it sounded like people like I remember my friend sort of saying, oh, I took my phone out of my pocket because I thought my internet had gone off on my phone or something, and I'm like, oh, right, okay. So I had to like learn to jump on the next question a bit quicker and learn to cut out those sort of awkward
try to make sure that you don't have to edit those out, because that's actually the other hard part, where like if there is a bunch of awkward silence, you have to edit all that out. But if you just can kind of work through that dead air and make sure that there's not too many awkward silences or anything, that was I think the thing that we were able to overcome pretty quickly, I think, just because I think it's easier when like it's the two of us. So if one of us is not talking, the other one can talk, But I imagine like by yourself, like that's something that you've really got to like make sure that you're not like confusing the listener.
I'll tell you something else that happens a lot as well, is that when you're live streaming a podcast on Twitch, obviously you've got people in your chat room that are talking, and you're interacting with the people in chat. And what I find myself doing even now is I'll have people, answering the question that I've just asked them. I'll type a message into the chat replying to somebody, then they'll finish talking, and then you're like, because you're focused on the chat, you're not focused on the next question. So you end up having this like awkward point where you're like trying to think of like the next question that you're going on to, and then sometimes I just like I forget, and I get a bit flustered, and I just start laughing a little bit, and I'm like, so they'll finish up and it'll go silent. I'll be like, yeah, so, yeah, that was a really good answer, and then and
I've done
I don't mean it in a rude way, but
no, it's funny. It happens all the time.
Yeah, with podcasts, you really got to make sure that like there's a lot of audio cues. Like whenever you do things, there's like hand gestures and all kinds of facial expressions you can make. But if you're not making any sound, a listener won't be able to really appreciate that. And I think that's something that a lot of podcasters I notice that some people don't really realize, because they always record a video and they don't ever consider the fact that maybe someone's listening to the podcast and that there's like things that they're not currently like. So it's like you kind of verbalize those things as they happen. You don't want to. I always think that you kind of try to cater the podcast more towards the audio listener, and then video next, because you don't want because like the video is, if the audio is good enough, then the video will be just as good, but there's just the video element.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really stress about the video element all that much. I mean, I know I stream it on Twitch, but the only reason why I actually stream it is because my schedule is, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. And what I was finding a couple of months back is that I was streaming the same game on Monday and Tuesday, and it just felt really mundane and like boring and drony that I was doing like the same game 2 days in a row. So I wanted something to break it up. So I thought, what can I do on a Monday? And it started off as just like a just chatting type. It was a talk show basically, where I would just invite the guest on. But then referring back to when I spoke about the podcast, I had this idea of, well, why don't I just do the talk show, but turn it into a podcast at the same time? And, listening to all these like business podcasts and things, going to the gym, I knew that there was a good revenue streaming podcast. So now I kind of I only record the podcast because it's it's kind of like killing two birds, one stone. You know, you get into stream whilst you're recording a podcast. So I turn off the alerts, so there's no like verbal sounds from the alerts and things. And I respond to people in the chat by typing to them. And I also have quite a bit of an active community and moderators that will welcome in new people on my behalf and tell them that, you know, there'll be time at the end for questions from the audience and things. So I like to include the audience as well. So, and it's also like how I tie two and two together, because at the end of the podcast, I'll record a sort of an ending where I'll be like, so if you would like to catch the podcast live and get your questions answered by the guests, then head over to, you know, twitch.tv/, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, eventually I'm hoping, you know, people will start pouring in from listening to the podcast and the YouTube videos, and kind of all ties in together, really. So it's kind of one of those smart business moves.
Trying to funnel your, I guess, your viewer base to one platform.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like, you want to make every piece of, you know, every part of that funnel, like, at least, you know, entertaining, because not like you don't want to like act like you're funneling them, but you really want to just like create, like, you know, an experience. Like, if they like this, there's something more to offer.
That's what I meant.
And yeah, so like you don't, you know, that way that people are actually like enjoying that, they can always get more. And there's something more to offer.
Yeah. So like the point is that what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start doing YouTube videos based off the core message that I learned from interviewing each partner. And then I'm going to be like, oh, if you'd like to hear more on this subject, then head over to the podcast. The link will be in the description. They can then listen to the full 1 hour podcast of what that video is based upon. And then then obviously at the end of the podcast, or, you know, on the YouTube video as well, that's all going to be sort of like, if you want to catch me live, then you can go over to Twitch and catch me live there, where you can get your questions answered, blah, 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 I can help you out whatsoever. And then obviously you can join the Discord, where, you know, you can catch me offline, and, you know, we can help build each other up and inspire each other. And then, you know, that cheeky thing that we all do at the very end. And if you'd like to support me a little bit more, you can head over to my Patreon. You know, because we all like to plug our Patreons, because, you know, it's those generous few that allow this dream to be built, essentially. So
yeah, that's very true.
You know what? I give you all the credit in the world, man, because you do your podcast live. If anything ever happens terrible, that say I completely drop the ball or Jim, she completely drops the ball, we can edit that stuff out and post that, which we really don't very often, just because the fact we like the human weird element sometimes of us being awkward. But has there ever been a moment which something truly embarrassing happened during your podcast? You know, maybe you forgot a question and there's like a huge, long, awkward pause or silence or anything like that?
Not in terms of the questions, purely because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I like to make sure. Plus, when, you know, I was mentioning my TV and film degree, I've got a lot of experience in creating documentaries, and that's where you kind of sit down with a camera and you've got somebody sat in front of the camera and you have to keep asking questions. And I'm used to retailoring questions until you get the answer that you're looking for, because when you create a documentary, you have set questions that you're going to ask, but you already know, as the documentary maker or as the interviewer, you already kind of know, and you guys will sort of know where I'm coming from. You kind of already know the answers that you're kind of looking for.
Yeah, the narrative that you're trying to create.
Yeah, so you will ask a question, and similar thing as what we spoke about earlier, if somebody gives you a short answer or doesn't quite give you the answer that you're looking for, then you can sort of like build up on that. You can maybe change a few words. You're not trying to manipulate the answers. You're just trying to,
of course,
you're just trying to bend the way that you're asking things to try and, you know, get the answer that you think is going to be suitable for the audience. Because at the end of the day, you've got to think about the audience that are watching this and the sort of the B-roll that's going to be put over the interview, and you kind of want to make sure it matches. So in terms of questions and things, no, a few times, I'll tell you, it's not so embarrassing, but the lights that I have on behind me, used to be on a plug that wasn't designed for them, and they would overheat after about an hour, and they would start flickering on and off. So there'd be times in the middle of a podcast where the guest will be speaking, and you'll just sort of see me slowly rolling off in the background, and then reaching down, and you can actually see the plug right there. And I'd like reach down, and this guest is like talking, and you can just hear me in the background going, "Yep, that's great, yep." And then
you're fumbling around trying to get it.
And then you come back, and then you're like, "You saw nothing."
And you say you're not funny. What's your favorite interview question?
Ooh. Do you know what, actually, and this might be the Slytherin in me coming out, but the best interview question I like asking is, what mistakes have you made? Because that, to me, that question sort of, it's nice because it just reiterates the human side of people. Because I think one of the biggest things with content creators in general is that people tend to forget that we are humans. You know, people are always like, and you'll see it all the time on Twitter when people are apologizing for not streaming, apologizing for not releasing a video, this, that, the other. And a lot of people seem to forget the human side of content creators. So asking people what mistakes they've made kind of, you know, it allows, especially when you see like a Twitch partner that's, you know, been doing this full time for like 2 years and is on, you know, is doing this and is loving life. And you're like, oh, what mistakes have you made? And then you find out they've made the exact same mistakes that everybody else is using, you know, like follow for follow, using tactics that aren't really going to give you long-term growth for streaming. Obviously, I know a lot of my content is streaming focused at the moment, but it's nice to see that human side of people, you know, when you ask them like what mistakes they've made. And
yeah, you want to answer that, your own question, I guess? What kind of mistakes have you made thus far in your career?
Oh boy. I did a lot of it's known in the streaming community as like follow for follow, or F for F, or S for S. And I did a lot of that when I was starting out. I did a lot of you know, I used to mass follow people on Twitter. I used to use a tool to mass follow people on Twitter and unfollow them and things like that. And it's just, you know, I made all the mistakes that every rookie makes in terms of, you know, trying to grow with the least amount of effort. But it wasn't necessarily, from my point of view, it wasn't trying to grow with the least amount of effort. It was trying to utilize the easiest way of growing so that I could focus my efforts on other things. But then I realized that you can't cheat the system. There's no way you can cheat the system for, you know, long-term success. So I stripped it all back. I stopped doing that. I actually had my own support community called the Twitch Legion. I stepped down from that. I handed it over to somebody else. I lost pretty much most of my viewers on Twitch when I did that, but, you know, that was my own fault, and I kind of rebuilt it back up as a genuine person that's just trying to give value to people, you know, and just trying to learn every day to create better and better content. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just one of many mistakes, I suppose. But if we were to speak about all of them, we'd be here for the next 3 hours. And
yeah, we'll have that for the next episode then.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of stuff over this podcast. What one piece of advice would you give to aspiring streamers? You've talked to a lot of people. I know you have to have something good.
The one bit of advice that I would give to aspiring streamers would probably be to write down on a sticky note the reason why you got into streaming. Stick it on the wall or on your monitor or somewhere where you can see it every day, and just read it once a day. Just read why you got into it once a day, because one thing that you'll find, especially being an aspiring streamer, is it might be, you know, for some people it's a week, for some people it's a month, for some people it's a year, but you're going to get to that point in the line where you're going to question it all, and you're not going to want to continue, and you know, your mental health is going to be affected. And it's at that time where you really need to remind yourself, you know, why you got into this in the first place. So that would really be my one bit of advice, because of course I'd love to sit here and, give out generic advice like, be patient, or, realize what value you're bringing people, what potential you have, or, don't just stream oversaturated games, all of that, which you can hear on any YouTube video ever. So yeah, that would be my one bit of advice. In fact, not even to streamers, to any content creator, just put up a picture or a sticky note of the reason why you got into streaming and just refer to it every day. And on that note, I should probably heed my own advice, because I currently don't have anything pinned up reminding me why I'm doing this. But like I said, obviously I'm doing this for my future family and my fiance and myself. So I kind of get to remind myself every day when I see my
Yeah, you do. You're with your partner too, so you got to see the reason. The whole person that you're working towards making this happen for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We truly appreciate your input, and we look forward to reaching back out to you and having you back on.
Oh, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, I don't get this opportunity a lot, being locked in my bedroom. My master only lets me out of occasionally, so it's nice.
You went from Slytherin to Dobby in like a matter of an hour, so okay. I'm okay with that, though.
But no, honestly, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure is ours.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Rad Gaming Podcast. You can check out our guests by clicking the link in the description.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever else you listen to podcasts.
We release a new episode every Wednesday and Friday. And as always, stay rad, comrades.